Polypede works. Yeah. So in One Piece, there is a particular line that probably translates differently depending on which version you're reading, but the intent is still the same. There is a line in 664 attributed to the dragons in which Brownbeard tells us that the dragons that Vegapunk has made can survive in any condition. What is so interesting about this is that way later, within the same saga, which is even more interesting because Punk Hazard, of course, is a part of the Kaido saga. But in Onigashima, the tail end of the Kaido saga, we hear Queen talk about King in saying that a Lunarian can survive in any inhospitable condition the world has to throw at them. So, in the entirety of One Piece, when it comes down to all the different races and all the different creatures that we have seen, this type of line has only been attributed to dragons and Lunarians. As you may or may not know, Lunarians come from the Red Line. I think that dragons and Lunarians both lived in harmony at one point on the Red Line. Now, on top of that, there are a lot of races in One Piece, right? But naturally occurring superpowers are few and far between, nor are they completely absolute, because with minks, for example, they can use electro, but not all minks can use electro. It has something to do perhaps with being on Zou for a long period of time or what have you, because Beppo could not use electro. Then you have the sea-dwelling races with the merfolk and the fishmen. Of course, both of them have the capacity to summon fish to their aid. Now, it's more common with merfolk. They even have like specialties. For example, Neptune can summon whales, and of course, Shirahoshi is the mermaid of legend who can summon sea kings. But we find out too that Jinbei, being a fishman, can also use this ability as well. With that being said, the only fire using races and fire using creatures that we know of who can manipulate fire as if it's second nature are the Lunarians and the dragons. So based on their similar abilities and how they're described by other people, that further bolsters my argument that once upon a time, both of them lived on the Grand Line. But however, I want to take you back to monsters. This both exists in the anime and in the manga. In both of those versions, a dragon's horn is stolen from some sort of castle, which, I mean, based on the looks of the castle, it looks like a European castle. So of course we're not in Wano. But it's interesting that this artifact was stolen from a castle. So my theory on the purpose of this horn is that the Lunarians, perhaps much like the film series How to Train Your Dragon, rode on these dragons in the past, and the horn was used perhaps in a particular way, depending on dragon and rider, to summon their particular dragon to their aid for travel. Then when the Lunarians were kicked out of the Red Line and the dragons dispersed, of course, then these artifacts would probably split up between the various kingdoms who helped to kick out the Lunarians, and they just stayed in containment for however long the period is between monsters and current day. However, I think too, what's kind of fascinating is that there's still a possibility that either the celestial dragons themselves or the various kingdoms that sort of took up the places of those who ascended to being a celestial dragon used actual dragons via the horns in place of, say, a buster call. So much like how the dragon is used in monsters, someone would use the horn and command a dragon to wipe out their adversaries, which is the likely thing to have happened, because I can't see how what happens in monsters didn't happen in the past. That just seems unlikely to me, especially when the power is going to fall into the wrong hands like it did in Monsters. But the horn probably lost its power over time because, of course, as we know, and as I said in my dragon video, talking about Monkey D. Dragon having the dragon fruit model dragon, that as these creatures went extinct, the purpose of the horn became kind of useless because you can't summon something that isn't there. So that's another thing. But to bolster this argument even further, there's a very funny thing that I noticed. Other than Uruj, who has his own video on the channel, go check that out. But other than Uruj, most Sky people have animal companions. They're very fond of their pets. It's very interesting because, okay, you have Conus with her cloud fox named Sue. On top of that, though, you then have Holy, which was Ohm's dog, that could use kung fu or something. It was very interesting. He could stand on two legs and everything. Odd, very odd. Following that, you had something very interesting and kinda is an allegory to what we're talking about today. You had Shura. Shura had a bird named Fuza. Fuza's mouth had a flame dial in it, so it could breathe fire, making it very much like a dragon, and Shura would fly on the back of Fuza during combat. On top of that, you had Gonfall with Pierre. Pierre, of course, was a bird who ate the horse fruit, allowing him to become a Pegasus. So I say all that to say, there's a very interesting sort of pet theme going on with quite a few Sky people. You could even extend this to say with Enel, with his various automata on the moon. They're kind of his pets in a weird off-brand way. So yeah, I think this then carries to the Lunarians, who kept dragons as pets and will call them to their aid via the use of a dragon's horn. Lastly, I would just like to mention that it is interesting, though I don't know if it will actually go anywhere, but it is interesting that the dragons that we see in the current timeline of the story, those being number 13 and the green dragon, as well as the various seraphim that we see who are part Lunarian, were all made by Dr. Vegapunk. So through the use of gene splicing for the seraphim, and probably through the use of some sort of Pokemon fossil revival technology for the dragons, we have these two creatures once renowned as the strongest creatures in the world being brought back to life in a way by one man, that being Vegapunk. So I just find that very interesting that it kind of all ties back to him. And of course, we're in the Egghead arc right now, so maybe all of this will come to a head very soon. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and go check out that dragon video because it ties into this one.